where we talk about the stories that have everybody talking.
Today we're joined by Susie Falk from the Falk Group Public Relations, and Jeff Wagner is back. The mother of an unarmed teen shot by a neighborhood watchman says her son was killed because of the color of his skin. 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was walking home last month in Florida when George Zimmerman called 911 saying Martin looked suspicious. When police arrived, Martin was dead. He had a bag of candy and a can of tea. Zimmerman says he shot Martin in self-defense. Zimmerman has not been arrested.
Well, I think there's two issues here. First of all, this shooting, I have all sorts of trouble with it. Now, the way the police reported, just for the record, they originally reported the shooter, Mr. Zimmerman, as being white. He's actually Hispanic. I don't know if that changes the dialogue any, but that's what his race is. He's a guy who was one of these neighborhood watch people who was, it's very, very strange. That particular night, he was out, he was patrolling the neighborhood. He says he saw this young man. He called 911, reported it. They said, "We've got an officer on the way, don't get out of your car." He did get out of his car and confront him. I have all sorts of issues with this shooting. That's not to say that I necessarily believe it was a civil rights violation that the Fed should be involved with, though.
Yeah, I think this guy was on a power trip, Zimmerman. He
Right.
he had I guess a record of calling in open garage doors and anybody that looked suspicious. So there were something like 30 calls that month that the
Right.
guy called 911 for, or at least called into the police station. So he obviously liked to be cop on the street. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I'll tell you, as the evidence is, or at least people are stepping up and talking about it, it's not looking good for him. I mean, the girlfriend of the victim basically has her recorded cell phone conversation with her boyfriend at the time, and he's like, "I'm being followed. This is unusual. I'm being followed." And then she, you hear it sounds like he was either shot or he fell down or something, and then everything went blank. So.
And Jeff, these civil rights cases are only pursued after there's no satisfaction through the criminal courts.
Well, you can move on them concurrently. The district attorney down there hasn't made a decision yet. I mean, except they're saying, look, we don't know that we've got a basis to charge him because he says it was self-defense. He says the guy was coming at him. Right? Then the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Department of Justice can look in. I have all sorts of issues with the shooting. I also, though, do have issues with turning this into, a race crime. I'm not sure that's what it is. I think it might be what Susie was talking about. Here you have a guy on a power trip who essentially provoked something, not necessarily because of the kid's race, just because he sees this suspicious character that he confronts.
Well, and sadly, a good life is lost, and
Absolutely.
his mother's
horrible.
trying to figure out, what happened to her son.
Right.
All right, coming up next, a cashless economy could be coming soon. Why at least one country is taking steps to get rid of what's hot.
We are joined again by Susie Falk from the Falk Group and Jeff Wagner from News Radio 620 WTMJ.
This video of a toddler in a wheelchair at the airport being patted down is causing a lot of outrage. This actually happened 2 years ago, but it's just now going viral. Some people say the TSA acted inappropriately with the security check, but the TSA saying it had to do this because the wheelchair couldn't go through a scanner. And we've been talking about this. They now have a different policy. They don't do anything for 2 years and younger as far as checking them, but I would imagine they'd still have to check the chair.
So, good for the TSA for changing their policies. When I looked at this video, I was sort of disturbed by what I saw. But you know what? This is a case of Wally World and the Griswolds trying to get there fast. 2 years ago, this family was trying to get to Disney World, okay? So that the TSA spent this kind of time swabbing this kid's hand, shame on them. They have changed their policies. But the fact that the father doesn't get bothered by this video until 2 years later. Dad was okay with it at first. If you watch the video, he's saying things, he's like, calm down, everything will be fine. And then they go to Disney World and everything's great until 2 years later when he gets upset. He's looking at some old videos and he decides to put this on YouTube. So now you got a lot of people looking at this video on YouTube and the policy's changed.
Well, and the flip side of this too is just, as a matter of fact, just starting Monday, they also changed their policy with regard to people over the age of 75. You had some of those incidents as well, like the little lady with the oxygen tank, trying to go through there. They've now modified it, and it's not to say that if you don't set off a scan, if you set off the scanners, then you're going to get a little bit of a follow-up. But it's not this strip search thing in all sorts of situations. I think this makes a lot of sense. Common sense.
Well, you know, to the TSA's credit, they're making adjustments as they get, criticized.
And that's a miserable job. I mean,
It's not fun.
Can you imagine?
No.
You're sitting there day in, day out. You're 99.999% of the stuff you look at, it's not going to have any problem. But Lord forbid, if you ever miss that one thing, then it's going to be a catastrophe. You couldn't pay me enough to do that job.
Okay, let's talk about Sweden now. Sweden's taking steps to get rid of cash altogether. Instead, buses, laundromats, and other typical cash-only services would accept debit cards. Only 3% of Sweden's economy relies on bills and change, compared to 7% here. Advocates say a cashless economy would deter thieves, bank robbers, and fraud. Opponents are worried about how the elderly would make the transition. What do you think?
Well, I think, Steve, anybody who's ever been to a baseball game knows that you're already going to that cashless thing because you're the guy that never has any money with you.
I think it would change the spending habits of people going to Vegas and other
I
places.
was more than happy to go to the ATM that day.
I don't
spotted
know.
me 50
Oh, I don't know.
bucks.
When you look at the whole fraud issue, I mean, I think people are more apt if you're using a debit card to fall into that category. So I'm not sure this is going to prevent fraud or identity theft.
I think we'll always have the need for cash, cold hard cash.
I like cash.
I like cash. That's the second least surprising thing. Courtney likes cash there.
How do you play
I like
poker?
cash too. No, I like to carry
Right,
cash.
here's my debit card.
See, I've never understood the debit card thing. I mean, I get the credit card stuff. You pay at the end of the month and all that. I've never quite understood the debit card
It's
stuff.
like writing a check.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I carry cash.
Or gold coins.
Uh-huh.
And I borrow,
I'm not sure
I
Jeff
borrow
should put
cash
that
from
out
Jeff.
there, that he carries cash.
Well, okay,
don't want people
not
to
that
Jeff will
much
walk you out
cash.
to your car.
Not that much cash, right.
Yeah, Susie's going to defend you as
protect
you
you.
head out of the building.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be